It's Hacker After Dark on 1010XL.
And a very good Thursday evening to you, Jacksonville. A little Hacker After Dark, before dark. In for Rick Ballou on 1010XL and 92.5 FM with Aaron Williams. The Hacker Ryan Green with you. Glad you are with us. A Thursday night that finds us with 3 Game 6s in the NBA playoffs. You know, we talked about this a little bit with Frank and Hayes there at the 2-minute drill. Boy, I thought opening weekend of the NBA playoffs, particularly all those game ones outside of Orlando and Detroit, it was just awful. Blowout city, and you're sitting there thinking, yuck. Is the NBA playoffs first round anyway going to be this bad? Well, of the 8 series, 6 of them have gone at least 6 games. You got 3 Game 6s tonight. You got 3 more Game 6s tomorrow. It's been some pretty good stuff in the NBA first round. That includes the Orlando Magic. Of course, there you are with the Detroit Pistons. Detroit got the better of Orlando last night. Boy, what a battle between Cade Cunningham and Paolo Banchero, 2 former number 1 picks in the draft, living up to it. 45 for each of Cunningham and Banchero last night. Detroit ultimately got it done. Magic lead 3-2. Game 6 tomorrow night in Orlando. And again, I mean, that's probably the Magic season. You need to close them out at home because odds are if you have to go back to Detroit for Game 7, that is not going to work out well for you. So a gigantic game tomorrow night. Some big games tonight. Boston looking once again to close out Philadelphia. You got New York looking to close out Atlanta. And you got Minnesota looking to close out Denver. And, of course, Denver, Atlanta, and Philly all looking to force Game 7s with wins tonight. So good night of NBA basketball, good night of NHL playoff hockey, and that's what I talked about a week or 2 ago. You know, even if you're not the biggest NBA or NHL fan, it's the playoffs, man. And for the next couple of weeks at least, every single night you got NBA playoff games, you got NHL playoff games. And again, I'm not going to proclaim to be the biggest hockey guy. The guy usually in this time slot, Rick Ballou, is a big hockey guy. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a hockey guy, but what I am is I'm an NHL Stanley Cup playoff fan, particularly when you go to sudden death overtime. Whoo, that is some good stuff, man. Good stuff. So excited about the hockey, certainly excited about basketball. But as you can imagine, this time of year, post-draft, OTAs on the horizon, we're going to do a ton of Jacksonville Jaguar conversation tonight. We are going to do a ton of NFL conversation tonight. We'll also mix in a little Florida Gator recruiting as well. If you look on the 247sports.com recruiting rankings, and I don't care what part of the year it is, I know it's April 30th, and guys won't commit for another 7.5 months. Whatever. When's the last time Florida has been ahead of Georgia in anything that involves football recruiting? Long, long time. Yet 247 Sports right now, the Gators have a top 10 recruiting class in America. John Summerall, his staff, Phil Troutwine, making some serious inroads on the recruiting trail. So we'll kind of tell you what's gone down with that. But again, outside of John Summerall's name not being Lane Kiffin, I mean, has that guy not been a home run hire the first 4.5 months on the job? Obviously, it's all about wins and losses. We'll figure that out in September, October, and November. All we can go on right now is the portal, recruiting, excitement around the program, what's being said about the program, and all of that looks to be pretty good. So we'll certainly dive into that tonight as well. Guest lineup looks like this. My buddy Ryan Roberts, A to Z Sports.com. He's been one of my draft guys for years. We'll talk about the Jaguar draft class. Was it as bad as some proclaim it to be? We'll talk to Ryan Roberts about that. I will tell you as well later on in the 7 o'clock hour, Chad Forbes. I know some of you on Jaguar Twitter are very familiar with Chad Forbes at NFL Draft Bites on social media. Chad's a guy that will just tell you what he thinks. He's covered the draft for years. He's a guy that doesn't sugarcoat a whole lot. And I wanted to get Chad on tonight because he, quite frankly, blasted Jacksonville's draft. He hated it. I thought he was a little over the top. I've had Chad on for years. I felt it was okay for me to have a conversation with him about his thoughts on the Jaguar draft because, again, I do feel that some of his criticism was a little much. So we'll have that conversation coming up later on in the 7 o'clock hour tonight here on Hacker After Dark. And also the coach, Mark Duffner. 50 years coaching experience in both college and the National Football League. We'll get Coach Duffner's thoughts on everything the Jaguars have done, not only in the draft, but on this offseason as we get ready for OTAs down at the Miller Electric Center, which, believe it or not, on-field work to the media where we can view it begins in about 3 weeks. We're glad you're with us. Still 8 o'clock, an early edition tonight of Hacker After Dark. Every night on HAD, we do kick it off with a big deal of the night. And Aaron Williams, let's do that right now.
Time now for the big deal of the night.
What's the big deal?
What is the big deal?
No, because it is a big deal.
On Hacker After Dark.
So, rewind the clock back. Oh, let's go 109. Right? It's a good number, 109. Because it was 109 days ago, 109, that the Jaguars walked off the field, losing to the Buffalo Bills on Wild Card Weekend. And at that point, 109 days ago, there were a lot of questions about this organization, a lot of questions about the roster and what was going to happen. There were questions about the coordinators. Would Campanile and Udinski return? What about the futures of Devin Lloyd and Travis Etienne? What were the Jaguars going to do themselves in free agency? And then what about the draft? Well, here we are, 109 days later. Tomorrow is May 1st, and once you get into May, well, then there's something every month. You got OTAs in May. You got OTAs and minicamp in June. And then, as we all know, in mid to late July, you got training camp, and we're rocking and rolling in the 2026 NFL season. So tomorrow, May 1st, really, to me, signifies, all right, it's 2026 NFL football time, because there is something every month now leading in to when the season will ultimately kick off in September. So if you look back 109 days ago, let's take stock about what has transpired. Well, first and foremost, we did not know, particularly about Grant Udinski. He appeared to be a finalist for the Cleveland job, appeared to be in the conversation for the Buffalo job, ultimately comes back for year number 2 in Jacksonville. That's a check mark for the Jaguars. Anthony Campanile appears to have been very much in play for Arizona. Also interviewed in Miami and in Baltimore. Yet Campanile also returns to Jacksonville for year number 2. Another really good check mark. So the coaching staff, for the most part, is intact. A couple of departures, a couple of arrivals, but by and large, your head coach, your coordinators, the main guys on that staff intact for year number 2. That's good. Free agency. Well, Travis Etienne got $13 million a year. Look, there was a lot of question as to whether the Jaguars were going to bring him back anyway. I thought maybe if the number was 9 or 10, you would think about it. When New Orleans went 4 years, $52 million, yeah, that was a done deal. He was never going to come back to Jacksonville on a $13 million per year basis. And kudos to Travis. He gets to go back to his home state of Louisiana. I guess he gets to have his name pronounced correctly now for the first time in 7 or 8 years since he left the state of Louisiana. And he gets to be the focal point of an up-and-coming Saints offense. So that's a stinger a little bit for the Jaguars. More on that in a moment. Devin Lloyd had an unbelievable 2025 season. Unbelievable. But if you want to be honest about it, a lot of people going back to August, leading into the last season, were very much up in the air, at least fan base-wise, media as well, quite frankly. I'm one of them that thought, well, Ventrell Miller is going to give Devin Lloyd a run for his money. Who's going to be that starting linebacker? Now, at the time in August, we didn't realize what Devin Lloyd was going to turn into in Anthony Campanile's system. And to his credit, in a contract year, Devin Lloyd had an unbelievable 2025 and got a big payday in Carolina as a result. So that's a little bit of a body blow as well. You also lost De'Ami Brown, no offense, but who cares? Greg Newsome, same thing. You actually got a compensatory draft pick for him, which is a victory. Losing Dewey Wingard stung me a little bit just because I was a big Dewey fan. But his time, honestly, had probably come and gone here in Jacksonville. I don't think he was going to start this year. So you lost some other guys outside of Etienne and Lloyd, but particularly those were the big two losses. All you do in free agency is bring in Chris Rodriguez, which was, to me, the quietest free agency the Jacksonville Jaguars have ever had. Now, will they bring in a veteran or two after the draft? Perhaps. But up to now, 109 days into the offseason, with OTAs less than 3 weeks away, the Jaguars have signed one outside free agent, Chris Rodriguez from Washington. No one would have ever thought it would be that few 109 days ago. And then you get to the draft. I know all the criticism nationally. Again, we're going to talk to Ryan Roberts, A2ZSports.com. He's on social media at Rise in Draft. Ryan's been doing it a long time. He's one of my favorites to talk draft with. And I'm going to ask him flat out, is the criticism fair nationally on what the Jaguars did? What about all these consensus boards? Is the criticism just a tad bit over the top? But when you take everything into account, everything, the good, the bad, players leaving, players staying, the re-signing of guys like Monteric Brown and Dennis Gardeck and Quentin Morris, the coordinators staying. Look, I can't sit here and tell you, when you take everything into account, that the team is better than they were 109 days ago when they walked off that field against Buffalo. Because they did lose Devin Lloyd and Travis Etienne. That alone makes you think the roster maybe took a step back. But of the 22 guys that started that game 109 days ago, 20 of them are still here. The only guys that left, that started that game, were Lloyd and Etienne. And that doesn't even take into account Travis Hunter. Or, for that matter, Jordan Lewis, I guess, because he was hurt too. And you get both of those guys back. You bring in Caleb Ransaw, who you never even saw last year, the third-round pick in 2025. And now you add these 10 guys. And of the 10 the Jaguars drafted in Pittsburgh, none of them are going to be counted on to start. You drafted depth. You drafted developmental guys. You drafted guys that hopefully can learn on the fly behind the likes of Brenton Strange and Devon Hamilton and Ezra Cleveland and Antonio Johnson. When you talk about the first 4 draft picks, Borkshire, Regis, Pregnon, and Husky, none of those guys are going to be counted on to start. Same thing with the guys on Saturday of day 3. Koziel and Williams, Cameron, the other Williams, Durfee, Hodges, all the draft picks, none of them are going to be counted on to start. What does that tell you? When you draft 10 guys, 10's a big number, and not one of them is a projected starter. Well, to me, that says the roster's pretty good. Despite losing Devin Lloyd and Travis Etienne, the roster is pretty good. When you can make 10 draft picks and not one of them is even in our mindset to start, unless, obviously, injuries happen at some point before the season begins. I know the national criticism is out there. We're going to talk to a couple of national guys tonight. One that hated the draft, I'll tell you, Chad Forbes, who I got on the 7 o'clock hour, He hated the Jaguars draft. We're going to have a conversation about that. Ryan Roberts wasn't near as negative. Had some negativity, but wasn't near as negative. So we're going to get both sides of it. But when you look at the roster as a whole, is it as good as it was 109 days ago walking off the field against Buffalo? No. I'm not going to blow smoke at you because you lost Lloyd and ETN. But am I confident with how the roster looks heading into OTAs next month? Yeah, I am. There's a lot of depth on this football team now. What was James Gladstone's message last year? Raising the floor of the roster? Look, I don't know if the ceiling got any higher for this football team. It'll take guys like Travis Hunter coming back, Trevor improving, a full year of Jacoby Myers, a full year of Parker Washington, BTJ returning to form. That's what it'll take for the ceiling of this team to get better. But the floor for the second straight offseason, I believe, rose. You got depth on the O-line. You got depth at tight end. You got depth at interior defensive line. You got bodies now behind Hines Allen and Walker. You got depth in the secondary, even with losing Greg Newsome and Dewey Wingard in free agency. I don't even think I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I like what the Jaguars have done. Has it been non-sexy? Yeah, it hadn't sold a lot of season tickets. I don't think when Nate Borkshire was the draft pick that people were calling, the Jaguars wanted to get season tickets when Albert Regis was a third-round pick and when Emmanuel Pregnon comes into the building. I don't know how many people are going to buy Pregnon jerseys.
I will.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, Aaron's one of them. He might be the only one. But my point in all this is 109 days ago, the Jaguars were a 13-4 team that won the AFC South. 109 days later, even with a couple of departures in free agency, I still really like the way the Jaguar roster looks, and I'm very intrigued by what could be in year number 2 of Liam Cohen. And keep in mind, Doug Peterson, year 2. After making the playoffs in year 1, the bottom fell out. Doug Marrone, year 2. After making the playoffs in year 1, the bottom fell out. Liam Cohen, year 2. After making the playoffs in year 1, to be determined. But I probably feel more confident about this Jaguar football team and this coaching staff coming into a year number 2 than I did in either the 2018 season or the 2023 season. Let's continue the draft conversation. Let's talk census boards. Is the criticism of the Jaguar draft fair? Ryan Roberts, A to Z Sports.com, has covered the draft for a long time. He's been one of my draft guys for a long time. He joins us next on a Thursday evening here in Northeast Florida. A little Hacker After Dark, Before Dark. In for Rick Ballou. We're glad you're with us till 8 o'clock. 1010XL 92.5 FM.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are expecting slight turbulence. Please remain in your seats until the captain has turned off the fasten seatbelt sign.
We have clearance, Clarence. What's our vector, Victor?
1010XL.
It's the only way to fly.
Hey, Hicken here. I couldn't be any happier than to join the George Moore Chevrolet family. When I say family, I mean it. Visit their beautiful showroom today off Atlantic Boulevard. Find out exactly what I'm talking about. No pressure, just friendly help. And whether you want a car, a truck, SUV, electric, pre-owned, you name it, George Moore Chevrolet has it. And if you can't make it over to Atlantic Boulevard, no problem. MooreChevy.com is easy to navigate as any site you will try. It's never been more easy to use. George Moore Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Leon Serza here, your lemon pepper guy. You know Wingstop always delivers. And I'm not talking about their cook-to-order, hand-sauced and tossed chicken sandwich in your choice of 12 mouth-watering flavors. I'm not talking about the house-made ranch. So good, nobody will blame you if you double dip. I'm talking about Wingstop that delivers straight to your door. And did you know they're open until 1 a.m.? So visit wingstop.com or use the app to get flavors delivered right to your door late night only at Wingstop.
Can't stop. Wingstop.
Hi, folks. Frank Frangie for the farm at Okefenokee. My wife and I and a bunch of friends just got back from the farm, and we had an incredible experience. We toured the regenerative farm, as well as the beautiful handcrafted cabins, and were treated to a fantastic farm-to-table dinner created by Congreve and Penn. Man, was it good. Well, you can learn more at okefarm.com. That's okefarm.com. And even hear my interview with farm co-founder Doug Davis to learn even more about this amazing property. That's okefarm.com.
The Jacksonville Waves tip-off opening night, May 15th at 7 p.m. in the brand-new Upshot League at 5-Star Veterans Memorial Arena. Experience the excitement of women's professional basketball and be a part of history. Get your tickets now at wavesupshot.com.
Hicken here. Experience crystal clear vision with the Eye Associates, formerly Bow 9 Associates, Schneider Eye and Wellness Center, and Janet Betchkel, MD, Jacksonville's leader in advanced eye care. From routine eye exams to specialized vision care, their experienced team dedicated to improving and preserving your vision. The same care you've come to trust, now with a new name. To schedule your appointment today, call the Eye Associates, formerly Bowden Eye Associates, Schneider Eye and Wellness Center, and Janet A. Betchkel, MD, at 296-0098.
I'm Frank Frangie, and I can tell you as Walk-Off Charities has grown, we now manage a large athletic facility with numerous fields, including the Bragan Baseball Complex. To get around, we needed a good, reliable golf cart. I went straight to Dynamic Drives and Design in Jack's Peak. I met with Travis, told him exactly what our needs were. Would you believe before you knew it, the perfect cart was delivered to us at an incredible price? If you need a golf cart, Travis and his team are the go-to. Learn more about them at dynamicdrivesdesign.com.
Credit card interest rates are now over 29%. Most people are only making the minimum payments, so they're getting nowhere. Hey, Prosser here, but here's what many homeowners don't realize. Using the equity in your home, you can easily access hundreds of thousands in cash. With Loan Pronto's Rapid Equity Loan, you can pay off your credit card, your existing HELOC, your car loans, or get money for that home improvement project. One client just got $100,000 approved and saved over $1,500 a month. Here's the best part. With Loan Pronto, you can do it all from your phone. With zero out-of-pocket, no hard credit pull up front, no appraisal, no long drawn-out bank process, and no touching your first mortgage. Rates are at a near 3-year low. Act now. Go to loanpronto.com. See how much you can get in about 60 seconds. Loan Pronto, 2,800 5-star Google reviews. Call 904-999-1508 or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Still present, ready. Farah doesn't flinch. Here's another call on the 1010XL hotline, driven by Key Buick GMC, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty.
Back here on 1010XL and 92.5 FM in the city of Jacksonville. We are glad you are with us. The Jaguar draft in the rearview mirror. It was an interesting one. No question about that. It's gotten a lot of talk nationally. I've heard the term consensus board more in the last 48 hours than maybe I've heard in the last, 5, 10, 15 years. What do we make of what the Jaguars did? How will the guys factor in to the 2026 roster? Let's talk about all of it with one of our main draft guys, Ryan Roberts. A to Z Sports.com is where you find his work, and Ryan's always kind enough to join us here on 1010XL. Ryan, the days after the draft, is it just like a decompress for you after so much work put in leading up to it?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's honestly the most fun time. You're kind of stressed going up to the draft because you have deadlines for scouting reports and final mocks and big boards and all that type of stuff. I didn't even get my big board out until like the morning of the draft because I was just so backlogged with stuff I had to get done. So, I mean, that's the busy time of the year. Right now, it's fun for me because I kind of get to sit back and, like you said, decompress and just kind of evaluate how each team did and some spots that I think that they made incredible value, some spots where I think they've reached a little bit and just kind of put the bow on the 2026 class and move on. So the next few days is actually a kind of a little bit more chill, a little bit more somber to your point. Like it's definitely kind of the fun, just analysis portion of the thing now that we actually know exactly where all these players ended up.
Well, there's no doubt that at least a large portion of the national media, when they look at the Jaguar draft class, did not like it. Again, the whole consensus board thing is an interesting topic, and you live in this world, and you've lived in this world for quite some time. From a mile-high view, before we really dive in, what did you make of what James Gladstone did?
Yeah, I mean, it was puzzling, I guess, is probably the best word I would put it. I know that there has been that struggle on Twitter over the last couple of days of like the consensus board and how valuable it is, and the NFL doesn't use it. And like, it's been a really strange back and forth. And I have decided not to get involved in it because I just don't think that I think that the consensus board is a good tool to have. I think that it allows people to have context, especially for the casual fans who don't do the research and the analysis. So like they look at those things, and I think that gives them comfort in like, where a player is relative to it. But like in the space, and I would assume that, and I would say that it's both on the scouting side in the NFL and on the media side of things, is like I am personally not worried about the consensus board myself. Like I went by my own rankings, and I obviously appreciate and respect what others think. But ultimately, how I'm going to grade a draft and how I perceive a draft is based upon the work that I did and the rankings that I did. But I would say that it is a puzzling one. Not that they liked certain players just overall, but it was the not the evaluation, it was the valuation, like the understanding of like where guys are potentially coming off the board and how you kind of play the board to your favor. I did think it was a little bit puzzling in terms of like the spots for certain players, but again, I understand that they liked certain players and I like certain players too, to the right valuation. It was just a little bit odd to see just where they valued players at different spots, and just ultimately how that is kind of posed against not only the consensus board, quote unquote, but also just kind of like where you're hearing from like league sources in terms of like where players fall. So again, the value conversation is an interesting one because each team has their own board and their own value. But for me, from an outsider perspective, I did find the draft a little bit off mark and puzzling. It's kind of the best ways I'd be able to put it.
Ryan Roberts, A to Z Sports.com. Nate Borkature, the 56th overall pick, caught balls at Texas A&M when he was given the opportunity. He just wasn't given a lot of opportunity. He didn't have a ton of targets. Was thought of, I guess, as one of the better blocking tight ends in this year's draft. Obviously, the Jaguars maybe see him more than that. What was your thought on Borkature leading up to the draft?
I mean, I've been kind of talking about him as like one of the cooler developmental tight ends in this class because, like, to your point, when he had opportunities, he did take advantage of it, and I think he does have like a pretty nice all-around profile. And he went down to Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and he really started to showcase that he has a little bit more athletic upside than maybe you give him credit for based upon his kind of usage in college. So I like the player, and I think that in a large, I think Mel Kiper, for instance, had him in like the 120s or something like that on his board. And I think that's what most people kind of saw him as, is like a early day 3 value because like you like the tools and the upside, but he's just nowhere close to being the finished product or close to a finished product as much as you can be coming out of college. So I just think that it was early for him is kind of the best I would put it. But I do think that there's always context to consider because clearly they valued him a lot higher, talking about the Jaguars. We'll see who's right ultimately in a couple years. But it is another interesting tidbit that I can put out there that maybe will make Jaguar fans feel a little bit better, is that I do know there was at least one other team that had a top 100 grade on Borkature. So like, he probably wasn't getting to the 4th round is kind of what I'm saying. Like, I do think that there was a team or two, most likely, I know one for a fact, that would have taken him inside the top 100 as well. So I don't think it's quite as bad as maybe people are painting it to be, but I do think it was a little bit of a reach when I think that his best football is ahead of him, but I don't think he's anywhere close to playing that best football right now.
And they doubled up at tight end, not only Borkature, but Tanner Koziel, and that guy caught everything at Houston. Now, he's just a big guy, right? He's like 6'7", 255. The fact that they took 2 big tight ends like that, but their games are very different. What did you make of that decision?
I think they can work together, which is important, obviously, when we're talking about like the fits, right? Like Borkature, to your point in our brief conversation, is he has upside to be a really nice inline guy. So he's going to play attached to the line of scrimmage. Koziel, despite him being a massive guy, is not a blocker. Like, he's just not. Like, he kind of lacks ability to create consistent leverage in the run game because he's so high cut. He's a pure seam runner. Like, he's a guy that's going to work down the middle of the field, and he's going to out leverage dudes due to his size in the air. And he's got stickum on his hands. Like, he doesn't drop anything. So I think both those guys can play together. because despite them both being bigger guys to a degree, Koziel is definitely more of the detached version of a tight end. So in the day 3 range, I had no issue with that tight end selection at all. I think that he can work potentially in some 2 tight end sets very nicely.
You look at the other 3 picks on Friday night for the Jaguars after they took Borkacher. Albert Regis, Borkacher's teammate from Texas A&M. I'll skip the 3rd rounder at 88 for a second. And Jalen Husky, the last pick of round 3 from Maryland. That guy had 11 career interceptions, I believe, in college, which is pretty good. And then the one everybody's talking about is Pregnon, the offensive lineman from Oregon. Ryan, in your opinion, why was he available at 88? Because I saw a lot of people saying they thought he was a round 2 type of guy.
Yeah, I thought he was going to go in the top 64 as well. I think that it sometimes with these valuation conversations, sometimes it's just about scheme fit. And I do think that Pregnon is a little more limited in like a pure outside zone heavy team that wants to create movement with movement, right? Like the ability to work laterally. Like he's not really that guy. He's much more of a downhill type of dude, which is why I think like in a gap power scheme or even an inside zone heavy team, I think that he will be very good in that spot. But I do think it might just be some limitations in terms of like he's not going to be scheme versatile for every single team out there. Like I do think there's some dependence there. And he's a little bit of an older prospect. And I don't really worry too much about that because he's an offensive lineman. And, as unlike running backs, offensive linemen can play forever, they're just kind of built a little bit differently. So I'm not worried about the age as much with them. But I do think that some teams probably look at the age and just say like, is he really tapped out athletically? Does he have any more development? So I think that's probably what caused the slide there, but tremendous value for the Jaguars. Like, I don't think the Jaguars are complaining, in a very controversial draft where everyone's talking about reach, he is one of the best value picks across the league. I mean, I think most people in the draft industry that I talked to that I respect had him as at least a top 60 player, which he was for me. And then some also had him obviously as a top 50 player. Most people thought that he was going to go early 2nd roundish and you end up getting him like near the end of the 3rd round. I think that you have a starting guard at a great value spot there.
Did Jalen Husky or Albert Regis stand out to you at all?
Husky's more interesting than Regis, in my opinion, because Husky does have a little bit of versatility. I mean, he played on the roof a little bit, played some too high. He also played some nickel at Maryland as well. So, again, in a vacuum, too high for my taste in terms of like the player being slotted in that spot. But as far as being interesting, I do think that there's still some developmental upside to have with Husky, especially because he does have those ball skills that you mentioned before, and he has alignment versatility. So I totally understand that one. The Regis pick, like I still don't understand it, to be honest. Like that was actually the one that I liked least out of those 4 selections, even counting the Borkacher one. Because again, like I like Borkacher like in a vacuum, and I think that he has his best football still ahead of him. Regis, like I just think is pretty tapped. Like he just kind of is what he is, and I think maybe he could be an okay rotational player, but I don't know if he'll ever be a full-time starter for you. And you took him in a spot that playing nose tackle, like you should still be able to try to find at least solid starting nose tackles somewhere on day 2. So I just think he was the one that I really just kind of didn't understand. The other 3, I at least could wrap especially with Pregnon, but like you could wrap your mind around the other 2 in Husky and Borkacher. Like you could understand the reason that they wanted those guys, and you could still be hopeful for development in the future. For Regis, like that was one where I was just like, yeah, I don't like that player in that value. I think that was just way too high.
Final moments, Ryan Roberts, A2ZSports.com, recapping the Jaguars draft class from this past weekend. As far as Saturday, we talked about Koziel. The one that everybody's talking about, I guess, is Josh Cameron, right? The wide receiver from Baylor. People seem to really like him. And then Durfee from Washington. I know a lot of people seem to be high on him and thought that was good value. What was your thought on those 2?
Durfee's really interesting because he was a Division II kid that transferred up to Washington before the 2024 season. And he was kind of a little bit of a rotation guy in 2024. And he had a lot of moments this past year, but he was also a little bit banged up. So it was a little limited. But then he went to the pro day and he tested phenomenally. And he's got a pretty good frame. He's not the longest guy of all time, but he's 6'5", 250 plus. I think that there is a lot of meat left on the bone with that kid. Like I could see that kid eventually being a steal in this draft. I think that he was actually, in terms of like value plays, I think that outside of Pregnon, that was probably the one where I was like 7th round dart throw and that kid. Like I would do that all day. So I like him a lot. Cameron, it has such an easy sticking point because he is such a good return man, special teams wise, right? So like he's going to do that stuff easily. And then he's a very interesting athlete because he's 220 pounds and he does some nice stuff after the catch. He's not the most like cat quick guy of all time. So he's not going to be like this dynamic route runner, but like he can have a role, I think, in an offense down the road. But I think special teams early on. If I could throw one more guy, like I thought the Parker Hughes pick, I know a lot of people probably don't know too much about the Middle Tennessee linebacker. And because I texted someone, I was like, man, Parker Hughes, like I didn't have him on my radar. And I actually just got to him like yesterday. I watched him a little bit and he's a very interesting downhill athlete. But my guy was like, my one scouting friend in the industry or in the team side was like, oh yeah, everyone wanted Parker Hughes in like the 7th because basically he was like one of the top PFA graded guys out there. So like there was going to be crazy demand for him once the draft ended. So I imagine Jacksonville, like some other teams probably would have done after him, they were going to draft that kid just to make sure he didn't hit that market and was able to kind of pick his own destination. So I actually thought he was a pretty interesting guy at the back end of day 3 as well.
You mentioned preferred free agency, undrafted free agency. As far as the Jaguars, I guess the 3 that most people are talking about, well, they're talking about Aguilar just because he's popular down here from his time in the SEC with Tennessee. But the 3 that really stood out, I guess the offensive lineman from UCLA is thought to be a pretty decent player. And then Devin Marshall from NC State, I thought people had him in like round 5 or round 6. The Jaguars get him. And then also the running back from Virginia. Did anything stand out to you what the Jaguars did in undrafted free agency?
Yeah, I mean, Jamari Taylor was actually a guy that I had a draftable grade on. So I had like a 6th or 7th round grade on him. So I liked him a lot. I like him a lot as a football player. So I think that he is tremendous value after the draft. Absolutely. You mentioned Devin Marshall. I mean, Devin Marshall went down to the East West Shrine Bowl down in Frisco, and he was one of the better players there. And like a lot of people that I respect, because I was not in Frisco this year, but like a lot of people that I respect came out of that week like very, very high on Devin Marshall, like to your point of like 5th round valuations on the media side. So I think that he, as a kind of a diverse cover corner, can probably play a little bit inside out. Like he can do a lot of interesting things. So he's another one I think is really interesting on top of Jamari Taylor. The last guy is Brian Thomas Jr. was the other one that like popped to me when I was looking through like priority free agency lists out of South Carolina. He's a guy that like, he doesn't have great traits. Like he's not like this crazy long explosive athlete, but every time I watched him, he was giving a good offensive tackle, both in this class and next year's class. He was giving him a really tough time, man. Like if any Jaguar fan out there wants to get a little bit of Brian Thomas type, like go watch his Alabama game this year against King Proctor. I mean, he took his lunch money, man. Like Thomas had a really good game. So if there's a guy that's maybe like an under the radar guy that maybe can make some waves in camp and maybe fight for a roster spot, I think Brian Thomas is actually a really interesting one out of South Carolina because again, not the most dynamic, sexy athlete of all time, but I mean, he had some really pop moments to get some pretty decent offensive linemen this past year in the SEC.
And the Jaguars now, of course, with 2 Brian Thomas Jr.'s, which obviously doesn't happen very often in the NFL. Ryan, final...
Not going to get confusing at all for you, brother. Not going to get confusing at all.
Hey, Ryan, final question, man. We got 60 seconds. I was curious before we started because a lot of your colleagues nationally, quite frankly, have killed Jacksonville. In talking to you for the last 15 minutes, you didn't like the Regis pick, but it doesn't seem like you're maybe as down on their draft class as some others are.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like I didn't like it. I would say, but like I'm a deep context guy, so like I don't like just like throwing shade at a guy for like again being low on our consensus board. I want to understand like ideologically why a team wanted to go that way, and again like for Borkature and a couple other like Husky and like those kinds of guys, I understand what the appeal is, so I can understand why their thought went there. Would I have drafted them that high? No, but I do think that there's at least an ideological understanding of like why you would do that. The Regis pick was one where I couldn't validate. If you wanted me to be positive about what I just can't for anybody, right? So I don't think it was a good draft by any means. I think it was one of the, I hate calling people losers, but like one of the underwhelming classes. I agree with that, but I do think that we need to kind of let things play out because as you know, as everyone should know in this space, there's always some surprises where a couple years down the line, you're like, wow, that draft class was a lot better or a lot worse than we originally thought. So I think patience is needed in true evaluation.
He's one of the best when it covers the NFL draft. He also does a terrific job covering college football, which I'm sure we will move there in the next couple of months. Ryan Roberts, A2ZSports.com. Ryan, thank you. Go decompress a little bit more. We'll talk soon, pal.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Thank you for your time as always.
Now, the Monahan's Golden Moment. Monahan Jewelers in Atlantic Beach, your local live streaming from the XL Digital Studios. Brightened by Harbor Dental Care, Jacksonville's first choice for dental emergencies.
Homeowners, ready to open your home to spring and shut out high energy bills? It's the 1 month only sale with Renewal by Anderson. Right now, buy one, get one 40% off windows and doors. Plus, 0 down, no payments, and no interest for 12 months. But this offer expires April 30th. Renewal by Anderson, proud partner of the Florida Gators. Visit bestwindowsflorida.com to schedule your free consultation.
License number CGC 1527613.
If you are an experienced electrician looking for your next big opportunity, look no further than the Miller Electric Company, a trusted name in the industry for over 96 years. At Miller Electric, we tackle the biggest projects in the city, offering you the chance to showcase your skills on a grand scale. We believe in rewarding hard work with the best pay, top-notch benefits, and an unbeatable culture where people actually care about each other. Take your career to new heights with Miller Electric Company. Apply today at millercareers.com. Miller Electric, an equal opportunity employer.
Why'd I go to the doctor? Working on the farm, my heart kept skipping a beat. I didn't think much of it, but my daughters made me get checked out. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit notimetowait.com. Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Baseball is back. Jumbo Shrimp Baseball at the newly renovated ViStar Ballpark is your home for affordable family fun. Tickets start at just $5. Fireworks after every Friday home game and kids around the bases after Sunday games. Log on to jackshrimp.com for tickets and details. Jumbo Shrimp Baseball, affordable family fun.
Yo, ET here. And you know that on the field, preparation wins championships, right? Well, the same goes for your health. Right here in my side of town in Fleming Island, Encore Research Group is helping locals take charge through cutting-edge research studies. Everything from weight loss to diabetes and hypertension. Their team of local, multi-specialty doctors is focused on advancing medicine and keeping our community healthy. If you want to see if you qualify, check them out at EncoreDocs.com.
Your time matters, so why waste it sitting in a dealership for a basic oil change? At Valvoline Instant Oil Change, you're in and out in 15 minutes. No appointment needed, and you never leave your car. Rated 4.7 stars nationwide and #1 quick lube in America by Forbes for customer service. The experts at Valvoline will have you on your way quickly. And FYI, your warranty can't be affected by having Valvoline work on it. That's the law, no matter what other places may insinuate. Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Quick, easy, done.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. When it's game time, Farah doesn't flinch. Hacker, After Dark on 1010XL.
Hacker After Dark, Before Dark, in for Rick Ballou the rest of the week. 1010XL, 92.5 FM. I do want to get in to a little NBA playoffs, a little Florida Gator football recruiting as well. But I gotta address this. Hit me up on the text line, designed by Lifetime Enclosures, 904-641-1010, 904-641-1010. And I'd love to hear some feedback because, look, again, I'm not trying to tell you how to feel one way or the other. But, like, here's a prime example. I got this text in tonight from the 309. 309 appears to be a big fan of this Jaguar draft. The gymnastics you go through, I assume he's referring to me, the gymnastics you go through to put lipstick on this pig is incredible. I assume referring to the Jaguar draft. Now, I'm not trying to sway your opinion one way or the other. If you hate the draft, then you hate the draft. And guess what? There's going to be nothing to change your mind until minimum August, when we're out there at training camp and when preseason games start. So there's going to be no changing your mind tonight or in May or in June or in July, because obviously it's the talking season. You know, we can comment on what goes on at OTAs and at mini camp and the beginning stages of training camp. But when it comes to Nate Borkesher and Albert Regis and, you know, Emmanuel Pregnon and Jalen Husky and all these guys that were drafted, whether you like the draft, whether you hate the draft, or whether you're somewhere in the middle, that's where you're going to be until minimum August or September, till we start seeing some results. And even at that point, like I said earlier, none of these guys are going to be projected to start. They're all going to be backups. Now, Borkesher is going to play, but obviously the starting tight end is Brenton Strange. Albert Regis is going to play, but it appears he's going to be Devon Hamilton's backup. Emmanuel Pregnon's probably not going to play in the regular season. You got Ezra Cleveland. You got Patrick McCarry that's still here. Jalen Husky, is he going to play in the secondary? I don't know. You got Eric Murray and Antonio Johnson and Caleb Ransaw coming back and Rayon Lane, and then obviously all the corners. So the point is, if you hate this draft, there's not going to be a whole lot that's going to be able to sway your mind. But if you hate the draft and you're a Jaguar fan, which I know there's a lot of you that do, I've talked to you, social media, my own group of friends, I know there's a ton of Jaguar fans that don't like this draft, or dare I say hate this draft. I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to put my trust in James Gladstone until he shows me that I can no longer do that. And why am I going to do that? Well, it's very simple. James Gladstone, Liam Cohen, and Tony Baselli, the triumvirate here with the Jacksonville Jaguars, inherited a football team that had lost 18 of 23 games prior to their arrival. I mean, that's putrid. That's horrifically bad. They had lost 18 of their last 23 games prior to the arrival of Cohen, Gladstone, and Baselli. And in 1 year's time, 1 year, that 5-18 disaster was turned into 13-4 and only the 5th division championship in the 30-plus year history of the Jaguar franchise. So that alone should buy Gladstone a little bit of leeway. And you say, well, it was coaching. Cohen inherited a lot of these players. Well, okay, let's think about that. The Jacoby Myers trade was a grand slam at the trade deadline, signified by the fact they've already extended him for 3 years. It was a grand slam trade that Gladstone made. You bring in other guys like Jordan Lewis. Who here was excited about Jordan Lewis being signed last year in free agency? Who here knew who Jordan Lewis was going into free agency last year? Be honest. Eric Murray, when he was healthy, was good. Robert Hainsey, boy, remember the grief the Jaguars got for bringing in Robert Hainsey? Oh, you got the backup center in Tampa Bay. The guy lost his job. He started 1 game in 2024. Why are they bringing in Robert Hainsey? Remember that? Might have been you that said that. I bet you weren't saying that at the end of the year. Robert Hainsey was pretty good last year. You know, people want to kill Gladstone for the draft in 2025. I mean, that's an incomplete. You can't really judge a class until minimum 2 years. The top 3 draft picks last year played a combined 17 games. Is it Gladstone's fault that Hunter, Ransaw, and Milam all got hurt? That Hunter and Ransaw got hurt in practice? In fact, Milam might have got hurt in practice too. I think it was training camp. And the guys that did play, Bashal Tutin, pretty good for a 4th-round pick, right? LaQuint Allen Jr., Jonah Monheim, you can do a lot worse than that in round 7. Rayon Lane for what he did on special teams in round 6. You also found B.J. Green, Danny Strigow, and Branson Combs in undrafted free agency. Look, if you want to kill the Jaguar draft from a couple of days ago, whatever, that's fine. Same people killing it will be the same people cheering if the draft class turns out to be good. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes the world go round. But if anybody's earned a little bit of leeway with their fan base, if anybody's earned just a small bit of leeway, I would think it's guys like Gladstone, Cohen, and Baselli, who inherited a nightmare of a 5-18 situation over the last 23 games prior to their arrival, and instantaneously turned it into 13-4 in an AFC South championship. Are they going to go 13-4 again? I would tend to doubt it. It is ridiculously hard to win 13 games in back-to-back years. Ridiculously hard. But is this team going to fall off a cliff like the 2018 Jaguars did after the 17 run? I don't think so. Is this team going to fall off a cliff like the 23 Jaguars did after the 22 playoff run? I don't think so. And why are they not going to do that, at least in my opinion? Good player personnel, a good roster, which has in large part been built up by James Gladstone and will be coached up by Liam Cohen. More on the Jaguars coming up in about 15 or 20 minutes. The coach, Mark Duffner, will join us here on Hacker After Dark. Coming up next, a little bit on the NBA playoffs. The Orlando Magic, Detroit Pistons, huge one in Central Florida tomorrow night. By the way, Franz Wagner already been ruled out of that game. Magic lead that series 3-2. But I also want to get into a little Florida Gator recruiting. Gator fans, do yourself a favor. Go to 247sports.com's recruiting rankings for 2027 and take a still shot photo right now. Because right now, on April 30th in 2026, the Gators are ranked higher in football recruiting than the Georgia Bulldogs. When was the last time you could say that? We'll talk about it next on Hacker After Dark.
Wherever you go, there we are.
I know. I checked online.
1010XL is on your smartphone and tablet. Download our free app for all devices and take us with you around Duval and around the world.
Yeah, I know how awful it is to get injured, but not like my friend Tom who got rear-ended last year. Tom McManus here. Morgan & Morgan can help you. They're the largest personal injury law firm in the nation. 1,000 lawyers, 100 offices across the nation, and over $30 billion recovered. And guess what? They don't get a single penny unless you do. A proven track record with backup. Hard to find these days, but not with Morgan & Morgan. For the people, that's right. Get injured due to someone's neglect, get paid. Dial Pound Law or check out forthepeople.com.
Hey folks, Mike Dempsey here for Dandy Foods, a Jacksonville family business for nearly 70 years. Heck, I've been talking about them for over a decade. The Thompson family's secret, Dandy is never frozen. Always fresh baked bread with quality meats and cheeses. No dry, crumbly subs here, only soft and tasty deliciousness. When I see that logo with the little guy with the cane on the label, it tells me I'm getting a trusted brand and a quality sandwich. So do what I do, stop in at a Circle K and make yours a Dandy today.
Roll through the off-season with AA Automotive on Richard Street. Who are new shining faces in teal? Listen for draft profiles to get to know the newest members of your home team. Elevated by Premier Outdoor Inc., a visionary of hardscapes and aquatics. 1010XL draft profiles are built by Premier Outdoor Inc., a visionary of hardscapes and aquatics.
Jacksonville made 10 selections in this year's draft. Their first choice came in round 2 at number 56. Tight end Nate Forkature of Texas A&M. At age 24, he's the oldest player picked to wear teal. Their second selection was also an Aggie. Defensive tackle Albert Regis, taken in round 3. In all, Duval got 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and 2 defensive ends.
When you drive past a Kuhn Flowers location, did you know their inside showroom is filled with gift items? Kuhn Flowers isn't just for sending flowers. Frank Frangie here. And when I need a unique gift, I head for Kuhn Flowers, Beach Boulevard and in Ponte Vedra since 1947. Kuhn Flowers.
Flowers and cards are great for Mother's Day, but why not make this Mother's Day extra special with something timeless from Beard's Diamonds? The team at Beard's has put together an amazing collection of affordable and distinctive gifts up to 40% off. Beautiful bracelets with diamonds and colored gemstones, stunning pendants, and gorgeous earrings featuring both natural and lab-grown diamonds. Think about it. It's the gift she'll be able to enjoy for years, even decades. Always a reminder of that special Mother's Day in 2026. Rings, bands, pearls, fashion pieces, all the latest from the world's top designers. Beard's makes it easy to show the mother in your life how much she means to you and to the whole family. And with up to 40% savings, you'll be amazed at what you can do with your budget. Get the card and the flowers, but top it off with a spectacular piece of jewelry from Beard's. Beard's Diamonds, not another chain store owned by Wall Street. Your local jeweler. Family owned and operated for nearly 45 years. Beard's Diamonds in the St. John's Town Center.
For the greenest, luscious lawn on the block, choose the local legends, Roundtree Sod. Don't just settle for ordinary. Let Roundtree Sod deliver you a picture-perfect lawn. To get a free estimate, call 7414-SOD. 7414-SOD.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Focused, fueled, fearless, Farah. Hacker After Dark on 1010XL.
Glad you're with us. Hacker After Dark, 1010XL, 92.5 FM. We're in for Rick Ballou the rest of the week as Ballou enjoys a little bit of a vacation. You know, the Florida Gators, seems like they've been on vacation when it comes to recruiting for the last, I don't know, decade and a half. The last couple of head coaches that Florida has had, obviously Jim McElwain, definitely Dan Mullen, and to an extent Billy Napier, have just simply not gotten the job done on the recruiting trail for different reasons. McElwain, it just was oil and water. It just never worked out. Mullen could have worked out. Mullen won 10 games, numerous times at Florida during his tenure, but it's been pretty well documented that he wasn't a very big fan of recruiting. And Napier tried and sometimes did a good job, we thought, right? Getting DJ Lagway, that didn't turn out to be all that great. But ultimately, it just didn't work out for Billy either. So you bring in this guy named John Summerall, and for most Gator fans, not all, but most, there was the disappointment of not getting Lane Kiffin. And after that subsided, then it was the realization. So the thought was 4.5 months ago, well, all right, we didn't get Lane Kiffin, and we got another group of 5 coach from Louisiana, right? Napier came from Louisiana, Summerall from Tulane, obviously, in New Orleans. And that was the parallel. Oh, my gosh. No Lane Kiffin and another group of 5 coach from Louisiana. Well, we're 4 months away, 4+ months away, from Summerall actually coaching a game at the University of Florida. Still a long time before he actually takes the field for the first time in a game as the Florida Gator head coach. But boy, in the 4.5 months since the hire, to me, the narrative on John Summerall has changed drastically. I was having lunch with a couple of guys today, my buddy Max and Jared, and we were talking about John Summerall. They're big Florida Gator fans. And they're like, I like what he's doing. I like what he's doing. Well, of course, Gator fan, you should like what John Summerall's doing. What was the objective in the portal, right? Go out and get guys, but more so keep the big 5. None of you really wanted Lagway back, but what you did want back was Jaden Woods, Jaden Ball, Miles Graham, Vernell Brown, and Dallas Wilson. And Summerall was able to keep all 5. Then he goes to Atlanta and hires one of the best offensive minds in the country. And don't listen to my word on that. Just ask around the game. Ask people that cover the game. Buster Faulkner is in very high regard. I remember when I was on the Brent Key train, when I wanted Brent Key to be the next head coach at Florida, And I was talking to some Georgia Tech people, and they said, well, that's all fine and well, but make sure Buster Faulkner comes with him. Because people that covered Georgia Tech believe that Georgia Tech run last year had a lot more to do with Buster Faulkner than it did with Brent Key. I guess we'll see about that this fall. But you go get Buster Faulkner, and then you go get a big-time wide receiver in the portal like Eric Singleton. And then you go get this quarterback named Aaron Philo, who broke all